is I have a grand vision. I want to change the world. I want to have hundreds and thousands of phones and literally change millions of lives. That's what I want. But I have to earn the right at stage gating milestones in order to do that. And so when I first started, I was way too visionary, way too aspirational, way too like pie in the sky. Let's do all these crazy fun things. And at the end of the day, the number one barrier to me doing stuff was simple, practical brass tack stuff like cash in the bank and fundraising, social media algorithms. You follow explicit, sexualized, or just aggressive content. And the more aggressive, explicit, whatever, the more people engage with it. Why don't we disincentivize that type of content in the algorithms and feed people wholesome stuff? And early on, when we first started Techless, it was definitely creating waves. No one even understood what we were doing. I'd go pitch at an investor event and be like, we're raising $1.5 million. And it'd just be crickets, and people would look at their phones and be like, well, I don't need anything. Inspire people to live fully with healthy technology. So we are at the very heart of it. We are actually asking what is healthy for us, what's not healthy for us, and then we're actually making the solutions that are healthy. How many times have you installed an app, deleted it, reinstalled it? Everyone's done it. No one uses screen time. When we launched in London, we went and talked to a bunch of parents, and they have parental controls and restrictions, and no one uses it.
This is my conversation with Kaspar, the founder of Techless, makers of the Wise Phone. The Wise Phone is a smartphone designed with an eye to creating healthier consumer tech. Running on a modified version of Android, it doesn't have a web browser, nor does it support the various social media applications that tend to drain so much of our time. Chris joined me from the UK, where his team is launching their first iOS product, Sage Mobile, an iPhone custom designed for kids. I wanted to understand more about the philosophy of healthy tech and the practical challenges of bringing a new smartphone to market that actively limits available use cases. Chris talks candidly about the decisions that shaped the company's journey and the challenges of building a sustainable business without compromising on principle. We go over things like finding values-aligned investors, the role of profit in businesses aimed at creating social good, and what it feels like to ride a social trend versus trying to create them. We also dive into vision building. What kind of tech do we want to raise our kids with? And what would the world look like if young people couldn't easily access pornography or rage-inducing content? And how do we balance that with the preservation of individual freedoms? Whether you're a parent, technologist, entrepreneur, or just someone rethinking your relationship with your phone, this is a conversation worth tuning into. Hey Chris, how are you?
Doing great. Excited about today's conversation.
Totally, same. Um, you're in the UK currently? How are things going?
Yes, we packed up the whole family and moved to London for 6 weeks. We're launching a new product, and I'm overwhelmed by the press response. Very grateful for how the world's responded to what we're doing here. So
Totally. I definitely want to get into a little bit about Sage Mobile, the new product, and sort of the expanding product line that you guys are building out. But I think where I'd love to start this conversation is, why don't you take us to the beginning a little bit and sort of the genesis point for this idea of Wise Phone for Techless. What got you into this field, and kind of just a little high level overview about how the journey has been so far, if you want to give us a little bit of the highlights.
Sure. Yeah. About 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I kind of had this moment in life. I call them a blank page moment, when you can start a new chapter. I didn't have to do anything. I could do whatever I wanted, basically. It was a really cool moment. And my wife and I were doing foster care, and we had a couple kids, and the caseworkers dropped them off and said, don't trust these girls with an iPhone or anything that looks like a smartphone, because they've done really dark things with them. And so we were kind of in this conundrum that all parents face, actually, but we just got introduced to it because we had 10 and 13-year-old girls, is how do you not be a jerk and at the same time let your kids live in a hyper-connected world that expects smartphones? And that was kind of the start of the journey. And actually, it forced me to do a really deep dive into asking why, the 5 levels of why, and you kind of actually really get to the bottom of stuff. And so I went on a multi-month journey of understanding what's broken with our technology. Why is it? It ended up being much bigger than just kids and phones. It was holistic design systems and ecosystems and things. But it's been a journey since. But that was kind of the catalyst that was sparked the whole journey of where to get us to where we are today. So.
Great. My hope for this conversation, that's a really interesting, I know that's a conundrum that still, to this day, many parents face. So it's interesting that you put the entrepreneur hat on and sort of turned that into an investigation of, can we create a product out of this? But I want to get into, I'd love to divide this conversation into two halves. That's kind of how I'm imagining it, where we get into a little bit of the philosophy behind what you're doing. because I think there seems to be some thoughtfulness, some broader vision, behind the kind of organization you're building, and then also get a little bit into the practical realities of what does it take to build a hardware startup in the 21st century, and some of those kinds of things, and hopefully that'll give people a good view of both the clouds, kind of the thought, the vision, and also the nitty gritty. How does that sound roughly?
I love it. And it may make sense to dive into hardware first, because that's actually a simpler conversation, and you have a
Okay.
more meatier conversation around the philosophy, because that's the true heart of it, actually. So.
Okay, for sure, for sure. Why don't we do that? And I'm sure these things intertwine, so we'll sort of weave back and forth and see how it goes. But then why don't we do this? Why don't you give us a quick overview of the kind of product line that you have and the different products that's expanding and the kinds of services behind it, and let's get into like the product offering and then get into the back end of it.
Sure. So at the highest level, we have a company called Techless, and it is a parent company, but its purpose is to inspire people to live fully with healthy technology. So we are at the very heart of it. We are actually asking what is healthy for us, what's not healthy for us, and then we're actually making the solutions that are healthy, making the content, the perspectives, the tools, the things that actually help people live healthy. And if you think about like what Whole Foods did 70 years ago, there was no organic. It was everything was fast food, and it was magical, but it was making us fat. And we're kind of doing the same thing, but in the tech space of like, okay, we're pioneering phrases like fair trade and organic and things like Whole Food did, except when it comes to technology. So that's the overarching company. Handful of different products and services beneath, but really the two big ones is we have a phone called Wise Phone. It's a minimalist phone. It has a handful of tools and apps. We've started to allow some third-party tools that are trusted apps. And we've sold thousands of those over the last 5 years. That's been our primary product. And we just came out with a healthy iPhone for teens and kids, just launched in London a few weeks ago with Tate Modern looking out over the Thames River. And so that's our newest venture here. But we're in the phone space, but we also deal with healthy AI and content and book. I'm working on a book, so a lot more around that. But that's the big overview here.
And roughly speaking, so the Wise Phone is built on the Android platform, if that's correct, and then Sage Mobile, interestingly, is built on iOS.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember that a while back, in life, people go through these waves of like, oh, I got to get off the social medias and all that kind of stuff, and I've had my fair share. There was one time where I went in and I tried to actually delete Safari, and it was like one of the things that I was not able to delete. So that's interesting. Like how it's interesting that Apple has, uh, I'm sure you guys are working closely with Apple and things of that nature. Could you talk a little bit about like what went into that process? How are you working with these sort of big tech companies and these operating systems to
Yeah.
create these healthier tech devices?
Sure, totally. And just as a little side note, you were talking about how you couldn't delete Safari early on when I was like, I'm not in technical, but I was like working in the code and like trying to like pare down what is the smallest version of Android we could possibly have. And just so you know, I could turn off everything on the phone, the time, the phone, I mean, like every single thing except for the Google search bar, which tells you why did Google benevolently give Android to the world for free? It's actually about the Google search bar. That's the ad revenue that drives the whole thing. So, I mean, there's definitely something that's like the fundamental nugget behind everything. So then working on Apple, working with Apple, and we're working with Samsung and Vodafone. These are major big players, and we're tiny. I mean, we're playing in a world of elephants, and we're a little small company relative to them. And the truth is that they're starting to see the world change, and we are starting to become a threat to them. And they would rather partner with us than to be an antagonist to us. And so 5 years ago when we started, I asked the man, he was involved in our product team, the man that made the Apple iPad, the Gen 1 team lead for making the Apple iPad, worked at Apple. I said, hey, could we do this on an iPhone? And he just laughed. Like it was obviously no. And that laugh is just echoed in my ears for 5 years. And finally, the society and cultural pressures are strong enough to where Apple's willing to partner with people like us and give us the keys to the kingdom. And we've earned the trust to have that type of partnership. But it's been a long time coming, and definitely what we wanted to do early, but just couldn't. So.
That makes a lot of sense, especially that resonates with, different conversations I'm having with, friends and just folks, across different ages and how their sort of thoughts are shifting around our relationship with technology and things of that nature. But what does it take to build a smartphone? This is like a very fascinating kind of thing. Like my understanding is like these supply chains are sort of global. God knows how many like countries the different parts of an Apple sort of iPhone come from, and it's such a complex sort of supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, and a little bit about the process of sort of figuring it out. Like, what was that journey like of like how do you actually build hardware?
Yeah, so to full transparency, we have messed with custom hardware at this moment. We're using Samsung and Apple, and we are using their hardware because at the end of the day, hardware is actually not broken philosophically. Like the stuff that comes out that you can touch, there's nothing from a design perspective that's really perverse or broken or really messes with us. Some of the business models are broken. And at the end of the day, it's really the OS level protections and controls. And so what we've done, we started out, we've worked with companies in China and Bulgaria and other, I mean, we've messed with the custom hardware space a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're actually just OS level controls, protections, AI. That's the world that we are innovating within. But I will say, hardware is hard. We did a Y Combinator interview, which is like the best accelerator in the world. And the president of Y Combinator said, don't touch hardware. And so maybe Wise Phone 3, we might have some custom hardware, but it's actually not a value add. It's only a risk for consumers and for us, unless you're making, 250,000 units or more. So
Got it. Makes sense. So you're kind of riding on a hardware platform and an ecosystem of developing hardware that already exists, but you're playing at the kind of the operating system level. So not exactly the app level, but the sort of operating system level. How do you see, I was listening to a podcast that you did recently, and you mentioned a couple of interesting tidbits that I'd like to get into. One thing you said is you actually actively had a strategy discussion at some point around, are we creating waves or riding waves? I don't know if you remember this, and that really struck me as a really interesting kind of idea and sort of framework for thinking about a business. First of all, like where do you feel you are on that now? Do you feel that you're a wave has emerged that you're now finding yourself riding? Maybe you're a little early in the process early on. That framework. How are you thinking about that right now?
sure, that definitely. And that was one of the quotes from one of our board members who's a super smart guy. And early on, when we first started Techless, it was definitely creating waves. No one even understood what we were doing. I'd go pitch in an investor event and be like, we're raising $1.5 million. And it'd just be crickets. And people would look at their phones and be like, well, I don't need anything. And now everybody gets it. So the world has completely shifted in the last 5 years of understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it. Investors are, I mean, it's a totally different world. As far as creating waves, we have created some waves. I cannot verify for certain, but I think there are absolutely product features that have been released that might have existed for 10 years within Apple and Google both, that are details tied to design decisions that we've made that have been, like I said, unlocked because of pressure. And I think as time goes on, I'm part of a group, about 100 people, 5 of us are technologists, particularly in the human trafficking space, and protecting kids online. And we're going to make waves from a policy and a legislative perspective. So it's kind of like, yes, we're doing that. And at the same time, riding waves is like sustainability for the business. And we still exist because we don't run out of cash. And like, so we earn the right to create waves by riding waves. And so we're constantly going back and forth between, hey, making innovation and new features and product things that stretch the market in the minds of consumers and legislation. And at the same time, having a sustainable company that gives us the seat at the table to go and do bigger and better things. So,
Yeah, we're also a bit of a startup at Tuscan Quill, and so I remember when I heard you say that, and it really made me think a little bit because I think there are certain aspects of our sort of design philosophy. Obviously, it's not software; it's a publication, it's ideas that I think are a little bit harder to convey, and then there are other places where I think we're more sort of in the pocket of maybe where the public consciousness is. That's sort of my sense. And so I was thinking of like, what would you say to sort of an aspiring entrepreneur who's sort of looking at this and maybe they have some vision for what they want to do. should you just ride a wave until you achieve a certain level of capacity and only then worry about creating waves? Like how do you balance this? And how do you identify what is the active wave right now, and where you're just sort of ahead of the curve potentially? Like any thoughts that you have on that front?
So I can maybe, instead of giving advice, I'll just share a little bit of my story, which actually is advice because that's what it was. So I'm visionary. I see the world 15 years from now, and I actually live too much in that world and not in today's reality. So much so that the future is the reality to me. So that's just a unique way that I look at the world that kind of helps give me an insight of where we're headed. And so tell me to predict the future, and I'm pretty wicked good at it. But as far as another entrepreneur, here's the thing that I oftentimes find myself sharing again and again and again with other people that are like following my footsteps or mentors or just good conversations is I have a grand vision. I want to change the world. I want to have hundreds and thousands of phones and literally change millions of lives. That's what I want. But I have to earn the right at stage gating milestones in order to do that. And so when I first started, I was way too visionary, way too aspirational, way too like pie in the sky. Let's do all these crazy fun things. And at the end of the day, the number one barrier to me doing stuff was simple, practical brass tack stuff like cash in the bank and fundraising and a sustainable business model. We're actually charging enough to actually pay for our server fees, like that kind of stuff really mattered. And so if I could go back in time, I would set hurdles and I would be much more boring about it. Like people say, oh, invest in the stock market. A boring strategy is the best strategy. So it's like, don't lose the dream, go for it, have the goal, let that be the motivation, but it might be years until you're actually doing what you want to do, and don't disregard the fundamentals of business because that's how you earn I don't know, but I definitely erred way too far on the side of vision, and it cost me years. Like legitimately, when we first launched Wise Phone, I did a year and a half of R&D, 2 years before we actually brought it to market. One of my competitors came out with a market, and they brought it to market in 3 months, and it was a piece of crap and had 2.5-star reviews, and it was just terrible for users. And the truth is that they innovated in the midst of the user feedback and made such a better product in a faster period of time within a 6-month period after their launch that there was actually wisdom in that. And so take a dose of humble pie and like do the basics is where I'm at.
That resonates a little too much, I think.
Well, you're even what you're doing. I mean, you guys are super smart and you have abstract concepts and thoughts. And at the same time, you have on the other side clickbait, cheeky little articles that you could title that suck people in, and you're dealing with that tension of do I
100%,
go
100%,
abstract and philosophical and change
100%.
the world, or do I get people to click on my ad? And like 100%. I don't know what, but it's
no, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And then there's also this thing of like, I guess different minds are just built different. Some minds tend to gravitate towards the strategic, and some minds are very tactical. I think mine perhaps is a little bit of the former. Actually, we were having a call recently, and one of my co-founders, she was like, every call can't be like strategic vision building and like figuring out, the business model level stuff. Some calls just have to be like tactical, all right? Like, what did we get done last week? What do we got to get done next week? And let's just build momentum. And I was like, no, you're right. You're totally right. There's it's interesting. You learn about yourself when you try to start something. You learn a lot about the nuances of your own psyche, I think. Where would you say, since you mentioned that how you're trying to balance, you have some ideas that you're working on simultaneously that maybe you want to add, you want to introduce into the zeitgeist, and in other areas you're trying to build on where you think the market is in the field that you're in. Could you maybe explain a little bit about that in this world of like trying to figure out healthy tech? Where is the wave currently? What are some of the features that you think are really in the pocket of what consumers are demanding? And then what are some things that you think are still a little more visionary that you're working on?
Sure. So the way I kind of already alluded it just briefly, the way I look at this, I call it the cycle of unhealthy trends. And it could be smoking or fast food. Food is easy to resonate with. When fast food first came out, it was magical. The automat, you put in 5 cents and you pull out a hamburger. It's like wonderful and it's great. And then social adoption, it becomes super popular. Everyone loves it. Think about social media. I got it first because I got the first .edu college address when I went to college, and I got Facebook, and it was awesome and magical. It was wonderful and it was great. And then it kind of like you get a little tired of it, whatever, and you realize, hey, this food's making us fat. It's not good. Social media is messing with our brains. And then you have a complete total restructuring, a deconstruction of the system, rebalancing of the equation. The magic's gone. We are at the tip and starting to trend down for social media particularly, but then I think the digital is going to come. So the world, it will tip more towards analog, and it's going to become, there's going to be legitimately battles over who defines what healthy is. Like, what are the proper bounds for AI? What are the proper bounds for apps? What are the age regulations for specific apps? Right now, I mean, for example, Grok, Elon Musk AI, it's rated 4+ in the App Store, and they just released a not safe for work anime chatbot character that you can talk to that goes into explicit scenes. It's like 18+ content. And like, that's illegal. It's like very erotic stuff in a 4+ rated app. Like, there's going to be regulation around some of this stuff and age verifying your way onto devices. So things are going to get safer, healthier. There's going to be public outcry for more and more accountability. There's going to be market demand for apps or companies that just generally have not just an ethical stance, but proactively, redemptively leaning into restoring relationships and empowering people in face-to-face conversations and intellectual curiosity. And there will always be the McDonald's, there will always be the popcorn flicks, there will always be Meta and Facebook and all the garbage that's going to exist forever, but it's just going to decline. And there's a whole counter economy that will emerge in the future. So, and we could dive more into that, but that's kind of the overarching trend here.
Definitely, let's dive into it. I think to your point about like when fast food started, there was something I've been thinking about where this idea of healthy tech, right? If you kind of just look at it directly without layering on too much context of it, you're asking people to pay you for less, like you get less stuff if you pay us. And what's interesting about it is it totally makes sense that why it would work, but it's interesting that it would work. It's like, how do you think about that? Do you still experience challenges in trying to market this kind of concept of like, you get less apps, you're more restricted in our OS, go with us over the massive, big tech company? Like, do you find that that's a difficult message to get across, or do you find that it's actually not that difficult a message to get across anymore? And why do you think that is?
So, yeah, I hear you. There's just a couple interesting nuances here. One, you actually are paying. You just don't know how you're paying. You're paying in the form of attention and ad dollars, and like there's a cost that you're paying, but it just appears to be free financially. And actually, if you really think about it, you're actually paying money, ad dollars, like people don't spend ad money irrationally. So the money that they pay for ad dollars, aka your attention on the screen for free apps, free everything, actually is higher than a premium product like Wise Phone. Like if you really think about it, no one would put money into something paying for your attention if they lost money on that equation. They do it because they make money. So the truth is, you actually pay more for the social media, all the stuff that appears free at surface value. So it is a premium product. And if you look at the health food space and anything that's healthy or good for you, there's a cost associated with it. Gym memberships, organic costs more than non-organic. And as time goes on, it gets cheaper. When organic first came out, it was higher because it was innovative. And our hope is to get more and more access to the common man, if that makes sense, as time goes on. But if you want to know the delta of cost, just look at every single service that has a free version and a premium version. YouTube, $15 a month for premium YouTube, ad-free. That's what it's worth to Google, $15 a month. That's the cash that they're collecting on your behalf. Spotify, ad-free versus not ad-free. Even Netflix, they have ad-supported versus non-ad supported. It's an $8 difference per month. That's the cost that you're actually paying in literal dollars. So, there's a financial component to it all. And then the other thing I would say, the thing that grieves me right now is actually there's a direct correlation as far as people that get it. Feeding off that question you're asking, there's a direct correlation with income. The more people make, the more they get it, the more they understand, the more they value their time. And just like you would have, same thing with food. The more lower income at the lowest income levels, the more you're eating cheap crap that's just bad for you, that puts you in the hospital over the course of a few decades. And so generally speaking, people get it in the mid and higher income categories unquestionably they understand what we're up to. And then at the bottom level, no one gets it at all.
Um, so do you think you like how do you plan to like you know, how big of a market do you think there is for this kind of a product? Do you think it's kind of a niche sort of it'll always be limited to kind of sort of like a you know premium sort of upper income kind of segment, or do you think that eventually this will be something that has as much demand or more demand for it worldwide than the current kind of smartphone model?
It's going to be a complex hybrid is my best estimate, but it will become mainstream normalized eventually. Starting out premium, yes. And just in general, 20, 30 years from now, it will be the norm. Oh, this is healthy for you. This is not healthy for you. This, you know, what's better for you, Whataburger or Chipotle? Like it will just be that simple of a decision. And some people will just opt for fast food, and some people will try to eat out. And when they do eat out, they eat nicer. That it'll just kind of be second nature for folks. And I bet you half the population or more will be interested in trying to eat healthier. There's a lot of what I call Marie Kondo aspirational minimalist in this space. So we started out uber niche, digital minimalist, hardcore, 8 apps. Like that's 1% of the population that could live with that version one of Wise Phone. We've allowed third-party apps now. So there's a lot more people that could live with this. 50% of the population would be interested. But before long, we want to make it to where it's nearly inexcusable. We lower our price and it's nearly inexcusable for a parent not to do this. It would be like irresponsible parenting, borderline illegal parenting. Like this is just not okay to give your kid unrestricted access to a phone. And we're continuing to innovate as time goes on in the models that can support that massive widespread adoption. So
What are most of your customers like parents giving it to their kids? Like what's the mix right now in terms of who's buying these?
yeah, right now it's around 75% are actually adults for using Wise Phone. Particularly creative professionals, anyone that values their mental energy, focus, time, and attention. That's the group because they understand that if my brain is dead, then I can't do my job and I can't make money. And like there's a connection there. Artists, writers, deep thinkers. That's our primary group. But yeah, 25% are for kids. That's that's who we actually made the phone for, but we made it really sophisticated. And so it kind of sucked in that crowd, that digital minimalist crowd. And so that was our first one. Our new product now, which we just launched 2 weeks ago, is called Sage Mobile. And this is an iPhone for kids. And I don't know what the market mix is going to be. I have a feeling 10, 15% are going to be adults, but we are marketing it for kids and teens, and that's going to be the primary group.
So we probably should have done this a little bit earlier just to give people a little more context, but you essentially you're trying to figure out like a middle path design philosophy that
Yeah.
allows somebody to live a modern way of life with modern tech,
Yep.
but in a way that is quote unquote healthy, right? So what are the principles that you've discovered for this kind of middle path design philosophy? In the sense, you can get as specific as these are the specific apps that if you remove them, there's like a huge delta in sort of subjective well-being or whatever. Or you can get abstract about it. Like, what are the design principles for creating this kind of phone that hits that sweet spot?
Yeah. And so to kind of just make it plain, the way I always think about this is I say, hey, the default for the world is hyper connected. It's just busy, messy, everything. And then people really see I either have to be hyper connected and I'm all in, or there's this other binary that is I have to be Amish, like just disconnect. And there is no in between. And the truth is that there hasn't been an in between because there are micro design philosophies between those two. That's what we're calling the healthy tech way. And they're nuanced and they're complicated and they're sophisticated, but there's big differences. So like one of the examples is premium versus free. Okay. If you pay for a premium service, it actually does pay for the company in a way that is above the table instead of below the table. Like that is actually part of our business model. So and that manifests itself into hundreds of different reasons. The motivation behind the app now is not eyeballs on the screen. It just completely changes the incentive structure. We just want you to stick around for another month, like now I'm motivated to serve you in what you want. So that's a business model thing. The another business model piece, and I'm not actually getting into the tech design piece, but another huge one that really matters a lot is actually what is the purpose of the money of the investment behind the company. And I'm not a big anti venture capital, Wall Street guy, anything. I'm actually very politically not motivated. I don't speak politically. But if you follow the whys behind things, it's because venture capital's purpose is to 100x their dollars. And there's not a degree of sacrifice that big tech companies are willing to take because they have so much pressure and investor expectation for it. So when we took on investor dollars, we were very sincere and did a lot of reverse due diligence, playing out scenarios like, hey, if we didn't sell in 15 years, are you okay with that? And if we got a yes, okay, we're interested. And if they're like, no, you need to sell in 6 years, well, that's not what we're doing. We're not a pump and dump company. Or if our sales go down 15% because we're not going to exploit teen girls' attentions like some other companies out there does, are you okay with that? Yes, that's good. So we've kind of tried to solve on that level. So there's some business incentives, but yeah, happy to dive into some more specific tech things along that healthy tech continuum if you want.
Definitely, let's stick on that. But I'm very curious about these pitch meetings. That's a very unorthodox kind of way of courting capital, and I'd love to get into that also. But definitely, let's stick on that. The business model stuff makes sense. Get paid for serving the user who is the actual user of the phone, and not some third party align incentives, etc. But what exactly on the tech side? What are the principles?
So I'm still working on them. They're dynamic. They're evolving constantly. And I probably have a list of about 120 of them or so. Some of the higher ones. In general, we believe in parental authority, not government authority. So parents have ultimate authority over what they want to do with their kids. We believe that families should be pushed together by technology, not in opposition. And at the highest level, our goal is to get people into the real world and in real relationships with one another. If I was to say there's one overarching principle, our purpose is meaningful face-to-face relationships. And that manifests itself in 1,000 different design decisions. So an example would be, hey, I have this relational hierarchy of a text message versus a phone call. Okay, a phone call is better, right? What's better, phone call or video call? A video call is better. Okay, what's better, a video call or in person? In person is better. Each one of those has a cost to it. There's less convenient for you and me to see face to face. Like I have to fly to you, that costs time and effort and energy and money, but that cost is worth it. It makes us healthier human beings. And if you follow psychology and all these studies, the antidote to the pandemic and isolation is actually in-person face-to-face relationships. So when we have UX decisions of like, hey, someone's spending a lot of time in relationship or like pseudo relationship with someone else remotely, we want to disincentivize that and like we've thought about like making the screen smaller or changes colors, or it becomes really frustrating to interact with this person digitally when you can interact with them via a better form of communication. So there's a lot of different tricks that we can do to push people up that hierarchy. But that's the highest level principle that we have, I would say.
That is very interesting. And I didn't, it's not just about removing the apps that consumers think are really sucking their attention in ways that are almost adversarial to their best interest. It's not just about that. You're actually trying to design in higher friction in the apps that are still in the phone to encourage more in-person contact. Is that right?
That's part of it. We're not dabbling too much at this moment within the apps. We will. We are curating apps. So we're curating based on a lot of criteria. I mean, all the way down to corporate and social responsibility, what's their privacy terms of service, what's their code base, what's their perspective on privacy, and actual manifestation, so we look at a lot of different things. But right now we're curating apps. I would love to get more into that app space where we're messing with the interactions. We have inter-app hooks, particularly with iPhone. We've shut off album artwork on Spotify. That's one of the examples of just like, hey, there was some abuse occurring with some of our younger users, and we don't need it. But on the things that we own, we can nudge people that direction.
Makes sense. Is there an For and feel free if you want to put this question aside, but I'm just curious, are there any apps that you found like really are higher on the end on the scale of like encouraging these kinds of pseudo relationships or encouraging what you've identified as like unhealthy
Yeah.
patterns of behavior that you're like, oh, these guys are like really high on that scale?
Yeah. So in general, categorically, that's what social media is. That's why it has the black eyes, because it is nothing but digital relationship. And so an example of a social uh, app that would be healthier, there's an app we have that allows people and it encourages in-person meetups. Like it's for micro events for communities, totally different world to have some logistics and tactics and figure things out and see who can RSVP and stuff for people to come together. 50 people, 400 people, it doesn't matter. Very different dynamic than, oh, I'm interacting by liking something that some NFL football player had that I'll never in my life ever get to talk to in any meaningful way. They have 4 million followers. Like, what does that do to our life? Nothing at all. It's just a lie, you know? And even so, that's like from a social media perspective, but even then, take it to AI. AI assumes the role of the source of truth, wisdom, and parent for parenting. So kids can go and ask AI all their questions, and now they don't talk to their parents. We have an in-house beta version of an AI tool that isn't the answer. It doesn't solve things. It actually nudges people towards relationship, and it says, "Oh, that's a really good question. You should totally go talk to your parents about that, or go talk to someone you trust about it, you know, or like maybe here's a couple of quick feedbacks." But there's actually boundaries on what its role is in our lives, because Google isn't mom and dad. It's not the same. So there's a couple different levels of how that could play out.
That is, I never thought about AI replacing parents in that way. I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense. What kind of feedback have you gotten from customers in terms of those who've accepted, or sorry, I should say those who have made Wise Phone a part of their life? What kind of feedback are you getting from them in terms of how it has transformed it? And obviously, I'm sure there are positive things, but even if people are telling you about how it has created certain obstacles or impediments in their life, that would also be um, good to know. And also
Yeah.
customers who maybe express interest, but they are somehow feel like stuck in their current mode. What is it that's keeping them stuck there? Do you have some sense of that? And third, I'll
Yeah.
throw all three at you at once in case I forget. What apps do you still keep in the phone? Like what's still there and what's still available? Yeah.
Okay, I'm taking notes here. So first on the user feedback. So here's the journey. We literally have charted this out. It's so predictable. We have a 30-day like adventure that people go on, and it 15 days in, it peaks in like this valley of like, oh wow, I have to like rethink systems and processes in my life because I was so used to this, and like you're legitimately rewiring your brain. Like people do this. They like pick up their phone and they don't do anything with it. Like it's just like it's this weird habit. But no, there is an inconvenience hurdle associated with it by design on purpose, just like there's an inconvenience with working out or eating healthier. You got to buy groceries, you got to go to different restaurants. It's like that's just part of it. Um, and so after people come to terms with that, 30 days in, consistently, the experience is greater freedom and peace. That's it. Like we've interviewed just recently, we interviewed 30 different users, like probably an hour long interview or so. We had an ex Google product manager do the interviews, and she's been at Google for 10 years and another 10 years outside. And to give you a sense of how transformative it is, she's very data driven, very scientific, very PhD esque. And she teared up. She said, for the first time in my career, I teared up hearing story after story after story of how transformative this product was in people's lives. So it's real. It's not the easiest. It's hard. Some people throw in the towel. I think we have a 15% return rate of people that didn't know what they're getting themselves into. And so, but that's a whole lot better than gym memberships probably after the first month. So yeah, there's a dynamic there. But at the end of the day, it's transformative, and it's a systematic, sustainable change in your life. And that's what we were going for. Not a 1 week detox, although that's a great experience to write an article about. But this is like a permanent new system. And if you want that, we're good. Um, Then talking about the apps, we currently have vetted thousands and thousands of apps, and we've greenlit 1,000 right around that have been approved. These are third-party apps. You get all the basics, calling, texting, clock, mail, calculators, the practical tools. Basically, there's the continuum between practical, healthy, not sucking your screen time, and the extreme is, yeah, you spend your life on this app. So social media is a no-go, games, no-go, anything with explicit content, no-go, practical things, transportation apps, medical apps, we're good to go. The middle gray zone is anything related to content. So like Spotify is right smack dab in the middle. People love it, they want it, and at the same time, you're kind of checking out from the world. So we've greenlit it, but that's kind of the very middle. So
And people who are stuck, who are not able to take that step, but they
yeah.
sense that it could be good for them. What's got people stuck?
So here's what they do. Honestly, I'll just call it for what it is. They just have excuses. They just don't want. I mean, that's what it is. Like there is some inconvenience hurdle, but the truth is I hear this all the time. Oh, I need this for work. And some people do. Like there are some people that legitimately like they would get fired. But some of it is like you kind of want an excuse, like, oh, you could talk to your boss and be like, hey, I'm here 8 to 5, carry a second phone or whatever that is. We have people and put boundaries around your life. Like I said, but I run the company. I have 6 screens in my office when I sit down. It's very complicated, sophisticated. We're doing international stuff, and I'm using Wise Phone, and it's fine. And when I need to check my email, I go open my computer and I open my email. And that little habit, checking in to work instead of it being in my pocket, is transformative. So we're not hard sell. We're just here when the time's right. When people come around to it, they totally get fed up and their eyeballs are falling out of their heads. So, but it's just I could go through systematically the excuses people have, and we're starting to get to the point where, like I said, as time goes on, we have fewer and fewer valid excuses, if that makes sense. So,
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Where do you see Wisephone fitting in the ecosystem of solutions to digital addiction? In the sense, like we talked about, the wave seems to be coming or rising in terms of a desire for a counterculture that wants these kinds of products. But there are different kinds of solution modalities, you could say, right? Like there's the brick or block thing where it's like you kind of wave it over your phone and it just like bricks a bunch of apps. So that lets me keep my iPhone or my smartphone, right? Yeah, exactly.
totally.
Maybe there might be apps that let you like at the OS level decide like, okay, I want to set time limits or time frames for which apps I can open, things like that.
Yeah.
This is a commitment to a whole different kind of phone. It seems like a bigger transaction cost. How do you think about that? Where do you think you fit? And do you think the big tech companies may be thinking about getting into this space if they see a demand for it? Like, would they not design their own kind of solutions?
Yeah. So 20 years from now, I mean, Wise Phone will probably always have its place in the world because Converse does, like it's iconic. It has, I mean, the whole OS when we built it, 2 fonts, 2 colors, 3 icons. Like that's just crazy to make a whole phone OS with just that. That was it. So I think it will always have its place in the world, but I do absolutely think that big tech is going to dive into this eventually. McDonald's sells salad, like they do it, but they still sell cheeseburgers. And so it's inevitable. We are, in a sense, the ones taking the risk to validate the market for big tech. Like Apple might just take all of our ideas and just say, "Oh, welcome to Apple Kids," and charge them $5 a month or for free. It might just be a thing that they do, sell iPhones, but they're not going to do it until we sell 250,000, and then they'll be like, "Hey, look," So maybe they'll buy us. I don't know. But so yeah, I don't think we have an edge forever. But what I do think we have an edge on is we have some very strong philosophies that are absolutely impossible for some other companies to adopt, some big tech companies. Like, I think one of the reasons Apple is letting us do what we're doing is because we are willing to say some stuff, particularly around like kids and explicit content, that they can't. And so, from a brand perspective, I think Techless has an evergreen design philosophy that will manifest itself in hundreds of different ways. I mean, it could be apps that we're coming out with, or smaller stuff, or easier things. Like, I actually don't care that much about the phone. That's just the medium. That's the low hanging fruit. That's the most intimate thing in our pockets. But I mean, whether it's AI or hardware or little things, I mean, there's just like 1,000 manifestations, televisions, or your autonomous vehicle. Like when it comes and drives through a drive-through and it charges automatically because it knows your order, like what's the regulation around that? What's good? And I think as time goes on, we're getting more and more into governance and philosophy and design stuff. And that's going to stick around and be forever. We're going to have a unique perspective that no one can change. But what we have right now, it will exist, but it's not going to like blow up to be 90% of the market or anything, you know? So
Oh, fair, and very, very practical. And what about with some of these other like different forms of solutions to digital overuse and compulsiveness? Like,
yeah.
yeah, what is the differentiating or compelling element of the Wise Phone model?
I mean, the truth is that there's some really good products out there that I'm excited about that didn't exist 5 years ago. So, I mean, if you want me to give you the sales pitch, like we are unbeatable. That's what we're selling. We're selling trust, and we're selling OS level, no workarounds. And that is hard. Like you put 1,000 software developers in a room, and we're working with the one guy out of those 1,000 that can operate on that OS level. That's what we're living. And so if you want something truly unbeatable that works, we're that solution. And I think that's really important. I mean, if you look at Apple screen time, how many times have you installed an app, deleted it, reinstalled it? Everyone's done it. No one uses screen time. When we launched in London, we went and talked to a bunch of parents, and they have parental controls and restrictions, and no one uses it because it's just like, it can be beat. It's a 20-step process. It's complicated. It's hard. So in a nutshell, it's simple, it's easy, unbeatable. That's what we're going for. And I can speak to the individual things, and I don't know all the products, but like anything at the app level isn't that like just guaranteed. I promise you, there's workarounds. There's like, it's not okay. I don't trust myself as an individual who gets distracted with anything other than OS level controls. So that's the hard sales if you want. But in general, I'm excited about the competitive landscape and a lot of the lower hanging fruit options. It's a good market movement, which I'm in full support of. So if we, 30 years from now, if we're not a massive billion-dollar company and the whole world is healthier because of stuff we did, I will be thrilled.
Okay, that's interesting, and that actually brings me to I'm closing out on the questions that I've prepped here, but I do want to get to kind of what you're talking about, those investor pitches, and again, thinking of that, I'm sure there's like so many like young aspiring entrepreneurs, or at any age, who are like sense this issue and want to respond to it in a constructive manner, rather than just tweeting about the problem or something, and this thing where you were like, what did you call it? Counter due diligence on the investor.
Yeah.
Did you just know going in that that's how you wanted to do it? That seems like a very thoughtful approach from the beginning, when you've got nothing, and you're just trying to like get something off the ground, to be willing to go into investor meetings and pitch meetings and have this kind of an approach. Could you just talk a little bit about it? Like, what kind of response did you get from investors, and what led you to what gave you the conviction that this is how I want to approach fundraising and find that aligned set of investors?
Yeah, so it gets a little personal, and that's a good thing. I had the blessing of being I'm a 5th generation family business owner. I'm a shareholder in a company that's been around for 125 years. And I worked in the company closely with my cousins and my uncles and everything. I mean, like for many years. And it was a joy. I loved it. It was an awesome legacy. And at the same time, I understand more intimately than most what having different values. We were respectful and cordial. And at the same time, this person had this one belief fundamentally, and this person had a different belief fundamentally. And we got along fine, but I could not do what I wanted to do within the company. And the whole purpose of doing this was to change the world in a positive way. And I can't do that unless people are value aligned. And so that was a non-negotiable for me in doing this. And the truth is, I possibly could have launched Techless and Wise Phone without investor dollars. I was in a blessed place in life where I had worked hard and I could have done it. But I wanted people that were connected, had investments. I wanted people that were value aligned. So it was actually more of me proactively reaching out to the value aligned people in order to make this come alive. And some of those investors, I mean, our board members are just so amazing. We have meetings and like breakthrough change after breakthrough change in extremely raw, vulnerable board meetings where I'm like kind of an open kimono and I'm not dog and pony showing these people to make them happy. I'm like, we need to solve problems. How do we fix this, this, and this, and this? And so I just came in understanding the dark side of what could be. And I've heard horrible horror stories. And I just wanted to make this thing very clearly mission focused. And so to do what I needed to do, I had to say, are you willing to let me do what I need to do? And I scared off a bunch of people. Early on, I had a $6 million check waiting to go from a private equity firm. And I just smelled a snake. And I said, the odds of them doing something squirrely and like, making money off this thing and not actually serving our customers is high. And we just walked away and it was fine. And there was a cost. I mean, capital is a very real thing for us. And that's been a limiting factor. And I'm not great at fundraising. And so that wasn't out of a position of strength. It was out of a position of strong conviction that this wasn't what the world needed. So
no, that's I mean, I'll just be honest. I think that's it's inspiring that somebody would because capital is hard to come by, and every time you take capital, there's a sense of, it does create a sense of like expectation, et cetera. And so like finding that right group of people and being willing to stick it out is admirable.
I'll just tell you a random story, actually. So
yeah.
I was at a pitch, 500 investors in the room, or 50 that were like legit investors, 500 people in the room. And they straight up asked me the question that you asked earlier. Hey, what if Apple and Google goes and copies all the stuff that you do? And I said, I would die a happy man to the investors, like, AKA, if what we have is not sustainable, but we've pioneered and innovated in a world, I would be thrilled. And so that instantly probably shut down 30 of the 50 guys that write checks in the room. But I just, so be it. So
yeah, I mean, just for again that young aspiring entrepreneur that we're imagining, like what was the hit rate? What, like, two questions, like what was the percentage success rate of like pitch meeting leads to outcome, and then how did you identify those investors? Like what kind of Google search did you run, or who did you talk to that you could you found that you had that you increased the probability that they would be values aligned?
I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm terrible at fundraising. I have a 1% success rate. So I've pitched 250 times and I've gotten actually it's better than that. I've gotten 15, 16 checks total. But a lot of it for me, it was more value aligned angel investors, which are less sophisticated, a little flakier. It's a little bit more hard work and the check sizes are smaller. We're talking 50, 100K checks. So it's just more work. I've had one institutional investor, venture-backed investor, go in, and they've gone multiple rounds with us, and they're my true partner in the midst of all this. But this has not been, out of all the things Techless has done, we've succeeded wildly on product and vision and company culture internally and some amazing stuff. And fundraising is probably our weakest link, I would say.
Do you think the time
is like $10 million projects, and we're doing it with much less than that. So
totally. Do you think that's a lot of a function of like you were trying to create waves in the beginning, and now that you're maybe riding some waves that might change in the future? Do you have a sense?
Possibly, yes. And also within a team, like you were talking about this a little bit earlier, we're talking about strengths and weaknesses. I believe so strongly in the value of leveraging people's strengths, and my strength is not in closing deals and fundraising. I hate asking people for money. I hate following up. I hate all the tactics like, when are you going to wire the funds? Like, that's just not my personality. And so if we go I'm thinking about doing a Series A raise and probably trying to raise $6 to $8 million. It would be our biggest raise to date. And if we do, non-negotiably, I want to have someone running point on that. And I can show up at all the pitch meetings and be inspiring. We have an amazing track record, and I genuinely think it's an awesome investment opportunity for an investor. As much as I've talked about the value, the numbers are good. Like, we've been growing 15% every single month. That's a 3.5x over the last year. I mean, just good numbers. But I still need someone else to run point, and we don't have that right now. So
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, I want to do a time check. I only have like maybe a couple more questions, but do you have maybe 10, 15 minutes? Yeah. Okay.
Bring it on.
Um, Business model. Obviously selling phones, I'm guessing, it's tough, it's competitive to bring out a whole new kind of phone into the market. How do you think about profitability? Like, in your business philosophy, in your way of approaching business, and obviously this is like business is a vehicle to realize a vision of social good, right? So where does profit fit within that kind of framework? Which is maybe different from business as a vehicle for building personal wealth, which some people may approach business that way. It's you seem to be approaching it in a different way. Where does profit fit into that framework for you?
So for me, and this is funny, we talked about this today in a meeting for the new Sage mobile launch. We have set forth a break-even mandate for ourselves. So the goal is to actually lose money or be or be break even. And the I guess the margin on our product for a very long season, any profit that we have, here's our hard cost, here's our margin. Any profit we have, we're going to do that to cover overhead, salaries, expenses. I want to pay living wages and be reasonable. We've been on the very tight side of that. We've got people from Apple and Google getting paid a third of what they were getting paid previously. But the goal is to reinvest all that back into the product for a decade. I don't know how it's actually going to pan out. We could make money. I mean, we actually have been lightly profitable for the first time ever in 6 years. The last few months, we've actually made a little bit of money, which is really nice. It kind of relieves some pressure from the entrepreneur, and our gray hair kind of grows back into our heads because we've been like days away from paychecks bouncing type of moments. So I don't know. It's we set the margins in order to do what we need to do. But at the end of the day, it really is the team is also value aligned. That's a big part of it. People quit big corporate jobs because they like what we're up to. So it's a very vision focused company. There's a reasonable degree of sacrifice that everyone takes. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
No,
it's
that
not
that
about
that does
even
that does.
focused on profit.
But are you targeting some kind of like we need to make this kind of return on equity at some scale, or is it like as long as we're paying for ourselves, we're giving people, a decent livelihood and we're all mission oriented, then we're going to keep growing for the next decade, and we'll get to that profit question later. Like, I'm sure you eventually you want to be generating returns on capital and things like that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So a lot of times, so as time has gone on, our margins have grown. Economies of scale are real. We started out with a 17% margin. Now we've grown more than that. So like it's a wonderful thing. And we figured out systems and hacks and tricks and server costs. I mean, we started just everything's crude when you start. I mean, even the Sage launch, legitimately, we're going to break even. I mean, we're actually selling our phones and our carrier plans they cost us more than you could walk into a Vodafone store here in London and go and buy. Like that's the cost we're paying. It's higher than the consumer pays. It's crazy. But long-term valuations are oftentimes a multiple of revenue for tech companies. So revenue really is kind of the main thing, and you can assume profit in the future. And since we're doing software, the margins can be nice long-term. So it's kind of one of those things that will work itself out as things grow, but we're literally just going for market penetration. So if we can choose as many people as possible, we have detailed pricing research. We could choose between the highest profit number or the highest market penetration number. And we're choosing the market number to get more widespread adoption at this point. And the sustainable profit equals sustainability. So if we exist 10 years from now, our revenue is growing reasonably, then we'll be in a fine place. And there's an equity component. Employees, part of the sacrifice they're doing is they're taking part of their comp in equity. There's risk for them in it. That equity could be worth zero, or it could be worth a lot more. So employees and investors all eventually expect some type of return, but we can even be creative in that. Like one of the stress test questions I had was, if we never have an acquisition or an IPO because it could just sway the company too far one direction, would you be okay with some type of dividend that you get your initial investment back plus some from the cash that we generate? And they're okay with that. So there's some creative options there for
totally.
investors. But it's all held pretty open handed. So.
Totally makes sense. Last kind of business nitty-gritty question. Just it struck me because you mentioned out of 100, programmers in a room, the one guy or girl who can finagle with the OS at a deep level, that's who we have. How do you attract such rare and competitive talent to your company when I'm sure they're in high demand all over the place?
We hadn't totally solved it, so we're still working on it. But the truth is, we have a really good team, a core team of super talented folks. And the truth is they've most of them have accomplished kind of like I did 6 years ago. They're sort of in a blank page moment. They've already had their success. They've already done what they needed to do, and now it's just gravy, and they get to live out something more meaningful. And they're just so fed up with big corporate. That's like everybody. They're like they've worked. I mean, our chief marketing officer, she's worked for 15 companies, some of the largest brands in the world, and led their PR groups. And they have budgets for $1 million product launch, and we have a budget for $30,000. Like, and she's like, okay, let's make it work, and just has the humility to operate within the bounds that we have. And she's doing awesome. And so I think that the vision is real, and people are just so tired of meaningless work. And this is very meaningful. And we are changing the world. That's what motivates them on some levels. We offer very flexible work schedules. That helps a little bit. Equity is a piece, but it's just, we found a few diamonds in the rough. And
Like meaningfulness is a currency, especially for very talented people who have played the mainstream game for a little while. Is kind of what you're saying, and there's an
totally.
opportunity there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally convinced that because of things that we're doing here at Techless, that within the next decade, that every major device manufacturer, Apple, Android, Google, Samsung, all those guys you're going to have to age verify your way on a device with the ID or something like that in order to access explicit content. Like, that is just such a Herculean difference. Can you imagine a world where kids don't hit any explicit content until they're age 18 and then they can go do it? Like, there's just a different world in that space. And so that motivates them. And I think it's a very real reality that we've talked about in abstract terms 6 years ago. And now we're starting to see the stepping stones line up, and we're like, wow, we're not that far away. We're eliminating excuses. Pornhub has gotten massive hits not because of us, but some other people associated with us. And so, yeah, you start seeing your
It's a profoundly different world. It's a profoundly different world.
And that's very motivating.
For sure. Basically, I have two questions left. If one is, if you could, at a high level, lay out the basic you kind of covered this a little bit here and there, but the basic principles of healthy tech, what are they, based on your understanding? That's kind of one of the things we're interested in, is like, what even is well-being? Like, what is health? What are its principles? Like, that's kind of one of the things we want to explore. And so I'd love to get your perspective. What is healthy tech? What are its basic principles? Including, if you could, what aspects of the current tech world or ecosystem are either inalienable from that or actually contribute to the healthful health, to that healthy tech kind of idea. And if you want, you can color a little bit of like, this is what a world based in healthy tech or principles would kind of look like, if you want to just kind of paint with a broad brush for a couple minutes.
Let me describe the world first. People sleep enough. They eat healthy. Their relationships are good. They find themselves gravitating towards one another with joy and peace and not away from one another. We're more human and not less human. We live more in a real reality and less in an abstract reality. There's more grace for one another because we've learned. I mean, it's interesting. Well, I could go. There's more grace for one another within family, outside of family, face to face. Like, it's just a different. I mean, imagine the world 100 years ago, and maybe it's a little less convenient. Like, right, air conditioning, planes, all of these have dark sides actually and consequences. There's some benefits as well, but I think we'll find a more sophisticated nuance of what's good and what's bad and kind of dial that in a little more. So that's like, I mean, and the childhoods would be very, very different than what they are now. And it will be supported by governments and schools and the environments that people are in. So that's kind of what the world could be in the future. And then highest level, healthy tech, I kind of look at it as there's sort of a trifecta. And the top half of it is relationships, actually. is that we have tech that empowers relationships with others in a good way, relationships with ourselves, our own identity. And actually, technology has threatened identity. That's the whole teenage epidemic. That's the whole girls and suicidal ideation. And I mean, just horrible stuff that's occurred as tied to identity stuff. And then also our relationship with God, if people believe in that, it's at least empowered instead of distracted by tech. And right now, this is one of the greatest threats to religion universally, all religions, is technology. And then, so that's the relational half of it. And I'm trying to think of the exact way I phrase the bottom half of kind of the counterbalance here. I'm working on a book and I'm word crafting currently.
Like effectiveness. Is that where you're going?
Yes. So in a sense, the relationships is the biggest piece of it, but then there's, and I'm wondering, okay, let's see, here we go. I got relationships is the highest. And then there's other elements. Okay. So focus and distraction, entertainment, totally different perspective on the assumptions around entertainment. Do we have a right to it? How much do we do it? What's the right amount? Dialing it in to be a right amount of entertainment. Connections. How do we connect with people? What's the depth of those connections? The idea of convenience. This is one of the biggest ones, is people assume convenience is good for you. It's actually not. There's a direct correlation. Convenience stores have bad food. There's something there, but that's the number one excuse people use. Oh, I need my tech because it's convenient. There's actually an assumption that we should accept intentional inconvenience hurdles, which is what Wise Phone invites people into. So I could dive more into those, but it ties into so many different, like I said, 1,000 different.
No, and I think you covered it. I'm just, it's like, do you feel people would push back and be like, versus trying to limit our freedoms? Like do you think it's like someone could claim that your vision of healthy tech is actually like a kind of paternalistic vision of limiting people from what's possible or doing what they want with their technology? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, it's good. I've thought about this a lot, actually. And my perspective has shifted over the last 3 or 4 years, because when we first started with Wise Phone, it was very limiting, like 8 apps, that's it, and very didactic in what you can do. As time has gone on, I've come to this perspective, is that we should have healthy defaults and hurdles to get into unhealthy behavior, but allow people the freedom to do whatever they want. So you have total freedom, but at the same time, the default shouldn't be, oh, here's this smorgasbord of garbage. The default should be, oh, you turn on your phone and it's good for you. And then you have to work your way towards the insanity, if that makes sense. And so that's really the difference, is where are the defaults? And it applies to everything. I mean, social media algorithms, you follow explicit, sexualized, or just aggressive content. And the more aggressive, explicit, whatever, the more people engage with it. Why don't we disincentivize that type of content in the algorithms and feed people wholesome stuff? And the more aggressive a headline is, you make it less like you go span that stuff, from an algorithm perspective, because people don't engage with it as much, but let's make this type of content the king instead. And so there's an example, but healthy defaults, even examples for the kid's phone. If a parent wants to turn on games for the phone, eventually we'll allow it. Probably start out with a small percentage of games that we know are good, that kids don't get preyed upon. And as time goes on, we'll allow more. But at the bottom end of the barrel, there's probably 30% we're just never going to allow. It's just terrible stuff, gross stuff, whatever. But we're going to give them the freedom to do that. But when they turn that on, it's going to say, warning, disclaimer, red flags. Are you sure you want to do this? It's bad for you. Here's what the site, and that's not what the default is right now. So
that's an interesting synthesis of the dilemma, which is like you should have to seek out the slop, not be inundated with the slop as a default, healthy default. That's an interesting concept. Great. Our tagline is sort of, we're exploring what it means to live well in today's America, and so that's usually, I try to make that my last question of like, what do you think that means? But I think you've answered that quite sad, in a great way already. So if you want, you can sort of respond to that. And if you want to tell us anything about your upcoming book or documentary project as we sign off, I'll give you the last word on that. Yeah.
No, that's good. I'll pass on the promo stuff, but living well, actually, I sign all my emails with the phrase "live fully." So we have a very good synergy there with you guys and your purpose here. And I would just say my final comment would be just to have courage to think a little countercultural. What we're doing is a little bit weird, but do it with some friends, and then it's less weird. If you do it in isolation, you're even weirder yet. But it's the way it should be. It's the way it should have been a long time ago. And we just got ourselves into weird little perverse dark patterns and we're just stuck there. But it's not that hard to flip. And so whether you buy a Wise phone or not, actually don't care that much, but I do want you to have the courage to try and go do something different than what you're doing now. Whether it's a week-long digital detox or spending time outside in the morning or looking at people face to face instead of doing a text message, whatever it is, just start on that journey because I promise you it's worth it and you'll be in a better place. So.
Great, great. And where can I don't know if you're very active on social media or anything, but yeah, ironically, right? But is there a place? Do you have a blog? Is there a place people can follow you if you're putting out your thoughts anywhere or anything like that?
Honestly, wisephone.com is our,
Wisefund.com.
yeah, that's where the only place I put out content at all in the world other than hopping on podcasts like this. And so this is actually the primary way I have really interesting conversations. And I will say on that, you have asked some of the best questions. I've probably done 30 podcasts in the last few months or a year or so. And
Yeah.
you're very intentional and smart. So thank you for the
No, I
great
appreciate
conversation.
that. This is really fun. I actually benefited. I'll be honest from hearing your experience and your insights. So, I'm really excited to put this out, and really thanks for your time and your transparency and your ideas. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime.